Okay, so in previous videos I went through, looked at building up the front end assembly, which was the main gearbox at the front. As you can see, it's all been assembled now. I was live streaming last night and I did get to give it its first test, so I did get a first hand look at it, see what it could do. There's a couple of things of note really. The first being that it is an extremely long wheelbase. This is going to have trouble getting over quite a few obstacles that the other cars don't. It's going to high center quite easily. The steering is also very limited. Let's have a look. So all you can see here is that I've used the horn that comes with the servo rather than one of the black ones. With the black ones, because they're mounted on the lower down here for the arm, it was interfering with the steering mechanism, if I can get that in focus. So it's interfering with the steering mechanism here. It would hit this if you chose the two longest ones. The third longest is the only one that would fit without interfering, so on a hunch I figured I'd have a look at the steering set, the horns that came with the servo, and they're mounted and they're molded to the top. I figured maybe it might actually just slide over the top of the steering mechanism, and it just barely does it. So that's probably the easiest way of increasing the maximum steering range. However, the steering range is limited, as I say. If we do that, this is the maximum steering range. Now the reason I say that's the maximum steering range and you can't mod it any further than that is because down here, the arm, this arm here, the rod end is actually hitting the gearbox assembly. So no matter how much longer you make this steering arm, or which servo horn you use, you only have a limited range, which is unfortunate. And that's the maximum steering range. I suppose it would be possible to increase it if you know how to make your own gearbox and the lower plate, because the mounting point just here, if you could maybe 3D print one with a longer arm and have the steering mechanism out wider, you could always increase the steering range like that. But short of doing that, there's not really anything else you can do to increase it. Maybe in the future they might make optional parts that might increase that length for these sections, which is this part here, on both the gearbox and the lower plate. But unless there is any sort of extension on those, there's nothing you can do with the steering range. So the suspension's pretty nice. At the moment the rear is using soft spring. I've also put only the thin clip, where is it there? The thin preload clip for the rear. It's actually pretty decent. A pretty decent resistance to it, which is good. The front, however, is, in my opinion, a bit soft, even with the soft springs. I've added the large preload adjuster, large preload clip, but again it still feels a bit soft. I'd probably recommend taking the clip off and going with medium spring, and then checking the checking if you need a preload adjuster or not. Definitely recommend upgrading at least the front shocks for the aluminium set, so you can have adjustable preload. The other thing I did was I filled instead of using the stock grease, I've used this damper grease instead. So rather than a slick, slippy grease, this is actually a sticky grease. And this helps with controlling the excessive like wobbling as the suspension is working. I'm going to do a quick test. My favourite way of doing it is just a quick drop test. As you can see, it doesn't bounce around, it's nice and planted. If you use standard grease, this would be bouncing all over the place, or perhaps even bouncing up and down like that. So it's always nice to invest in a bit of sticky grease of some kind. Get a nice planted feeling for it, and it all moves nice and smooth. Let's have a look at the front bumper. So the front bumper, this has your mechanism here, the clip for the body shell. Now I am going to mention I did make a bit of a snafu on this. It's hard to see in there, but there you go. You see the pin there? When I cut the part from the parts tree, let's have a look. Where's the manual? There we are. So if we look at the part on here, which is this one here, it has these little barrels at the end, which slip into a slot in here, under here. When I was cutting it from the parts tree, I accidentally cut it right next to the side wall and cut off one of these. That is probably going to be one of the biggest things most people might accidentally do if they're anything like me. So to repair that, what I did, I took a 1mm or a 1.1mm drill bit and drilled straight through the center of the part where the post is, and then I inserted a needle, a thick needle, which I then cut the ends off. And yeah, as you can see, it's actually working quite well right now. So it's not really an issue. It's an easy fix, but it's just something to be mindful of when building it. Okay, I believe that's probably it for the chassis. I mean, there's not really much to go into. Other than the front end, the rest is pretty standard, pretty stock. There's not really much you really need to do about it. Okay. Well, I'll leave this video at that because it's about to cut out. It's almost to the 10-minute mark, and I'll make another one about the instruction manual and comparing the length of the car to both the Land Rover and my custom 8x8.